Hello.
Areas like in here or down here, start using a smaller brush. Probably one of the areas that has really increased. I heard you thank you. And after hurricane, our school was actually displaced.
We had a wonderful student that was living in Wearables, and she wanted to do a project and find out better.
We want to send people out to train communities and train schools. Part of my coming out analysis is in that spirit and see how doing something like this changes the community.
Reminds me that it's okay to be open. Feels good because when I'm like showing people the school, I'm gonna say, hey, I just made this.
You know, we take artists and we turn them into teachers. People teach because they want to change the world. Don't bother to come to us unless you want to change the world.
It's transforming what your expectation is of college. You know, it's not just this place you go to and pay money to sit from the cup. It's also a part of the community, a place that's encouraging learning everywhere.
Getting a first-hand understanding of what the profession is like. It's not just an academic institution, it's a professional program. There's all sorts of other educational opportunities that we help to facilitate for the school and for the students.
New York is such a powerful thing. Students who come, to SK, should consider we want to hire
Test.
Brandon has become the vocabulary of our culture. Every year, using the fine art, they have a retail experience that they call Destination. This year, Museum of Fine Art is having Destination New York City. The Museum of Fine Art is interested in collaborating with us to help brand the entire Destination New York City experience. It's a life-changing experience for the student. They are contributing to the greater dialogue of branding and the needs of our culture, the needs for our humanity in the world's best.
Design has an incredible ability to help people see the same thing, to help a vision emerge, to help people align around the same vision. We have great conviction that design has something really important to contribute, and so this program grew out of teaching designers to understand that gap between what you mean to say and the effect it has on people.
We partnered with a middle school in Brownsville and had a bunch of middle school children reimagine a vacant space and brainstorm all of the things they wish that their neighborhood had. And so now the goal is to take that to people who actually have the potential to make it a reality.
The whole program is based on students working out in the community, trying to solve problems that are so deeply entrenched.
And all of us grew out of a team getting together, one coming from a product design focused program and one coming from an interaction design focused program, coming together and sort of doing this project that was really human centered, grew out of a need that the pair, Gaia and Shelley, saw when they visited on site people in senior housing eating and drinking and just being people. They got this idea to develop a role designed for people who had trouble with mobility, but also could be used for anyone.
I think they were just surprised at how comfortable it was for them. They were just delighted by it.
Our goal is to show people the pragmatic future.
Help for Change is a project that was done in a class called Intervention Interaction. The class was taking a look at childhood obesity. And so the students did a lot of research around what would happen if we took that time in the subways that people are waiting and we were able to leverage it for some common good. And so they came up with a couple different scenarios. One of them is you don't have any funds left on your Metro card and then you actually work for it. They would do this peddling device which was attached to the wall of the subway station. And then you could actually exercise and earn some credit on your Metro card so you could ride the subway. But most importantly, that you could actually pick an advocacy group or a charity that you could pedal for. Instead of earning money on your Metro card, would be earning money for the cause.
There's a real generosity here, a real concern about communities and reaching out to them.
What we do through iTunes U is we capture these amazing speakers who visit us in New York City and make that available to anyone on the planet that has the internet connection. Recently, we received an email from a woman in Norway who said she lives in the countryside and she doesn't know what she would do without our videos on iTunes U. So that was really nice. To be successful in this world, we have to be active learners and ongoing learners. We're becoming a part of that conversation. We're actually contributing to the community.
I believe that a lot of our students will get jobs at top tier design consultancies, a lot of dream jobs that designers want to get. But I think that a lot of our students may not get jobs; they may create jobs.
The diversity of culture and background has been wonderful because they've learned so much from each other.
I think that's what's so exciting right now, where you get people from all different backgrounds and interests who want to be part of this initiative.
If I can help infuse them with confidence to make a difference, what more important is that?
The way that I look at success is when our students are out being change agents all over the world, that will be a successful program.
Get started in about 10 minutes, so if you haven't take a walk around the studio or feel free to score it up in minutes. We count in New York time, so it's here.
Little areas like in here or down here, start using a smaller brush. Rockland Park is one of the areas that we have to really if I heard you.
Go like this.
Oh,
But
cool.
just keep up this back.
Awesome. Thank you.
here or down here, start using a smaller brush. Rockland Park is one of the areas that was hit really badly by Hurricane Sandy. After Hurricane, our school was actually displaced.
We had a wonderful student that was working in the Wearables, and she wanted to do a project, and I kind of it.
We want to send people out to change communities and change schools. Part of my coming out to Allison is in that spirit and see how doing something like this changes community.
Reminds me that it's okay to be open and
Feels good because when I'm like showing people the school, I'm just saying, hey, I just made this.
You know, we take artists and we turn them into people teach because they want to change the world. Don't bother to come to us unless you want to change the world.
It's transforming what your expectation is of a college. You know, it's not just this place you go to and pay money to sit from the cup. It's also a part of the community, a place that's encouraging learning everywhere.
They get a first-hand understanding of what the profession is like. It's not just an academic institution, it's a professional program. There's all sorts of other educational opportunities that we help to facilitate for the school and our students.
New York is such a powerful thing. Students who come, to SBA, should consider New York part of SBA.
The sheer serendipity of the city, whereas you do have a choice, you're bumping up against people all day long. The quantity gives you a perspective that you wouldn't have elsewhere. Whether you're sort of reminded of humanity in that way, or whether you are realizing something about humanity, you're realizing these things every day.
When students come here, obviously they're used to a lot of different classroom learning techniques and skills, but it's really exploring the city while they're here, and they're going to learn so much about the world that they're going to be entering.
And we have to transform them into social learners. President has becoming the vocabulary of culture. Every year at the Museum of Modern Art, they have a retail experience that they call Destination. This year, the Museum of Modern Art is having Destination New York City. The Museum of Modern Art is interested in collaborating with us to help brand the entire Destination New York City experience. It's a life-changing experience for the student. They are contributing to the greater dialogue of brand recognition, music culture, that comes from humanity in what's happening.
Design has an incredible ability to help people see something, to help a vision emerge, to help people align on this vision. We have a great conviction that design has something really important to contribute, and so this program grew out of teaching designers to understand that gap between what you mean to say and the effect that design.
We partnered with the middle school, council, and how middle school sort of reimagine the vacant space and brainstorm all of the things that they had. And now it was about to actually have
The whole program is based on students working out in the community, trying to solve problems and show you that it's
And all of us we're having a team getting together, one coming from the product design for this program, and one coming from the interaction design for this program, coming together and sort of doing this project that was really human centered and grew out of care, diet, and show. They saw when they visited on site, people in senior housing, eating, drinking, just being people. They got this idea to develop a role design for people who had trouble with mobility, but also
I think they were just surprised at how many people it was before that. We were delighted by it.
our goal is to show people the pragmatic future.
Untitled for Change is a project that was done in class called Intervention Interaction. The class was taking a look at childhood obesity. And so the students did a lot of research around what would happen if we took that time in the subways that people are waiting and we were able to leverage it for some common good. And so they that you can actually exercise and earn some credit on your Metro card so you can ride the subway. But most importantly, that you can actually pick an advocacy group or a charity that you could pedal for instead of earning money on your Metro card, would be earning money for the cause.
There's a little generosity there, we're concerned about reaching out to them.
What we do through iTunes too is we actually some amazing speakers visiting us in New York City, and make that available to anyone on the planet who needs the internet connection. Recently, we received an email from a woman in Norway who said she lives in the countryside and she doesn't know what she would do without our videos on iTunes. So that was really nice. To be successful in this world, we have to be active learners and ongoing learners. We're becoming a part of that conversation. We're actually contributing to the community.
I believe that a lot of our students will get jobs as peers and consultants, a lot of dream jobs that they're not going to get. I think that a lot of our students do not get jobs, they may create jobs.
The diversity of culture and background has been wonderful because they've learned so much from each other.
I think that's what's so exciting right now, where you get people from all different backgrounds and interests who want to be part of this initiative.
If I can help infuse them with confidence to make a difference, what the more important work is there.
The way that I look at success is when our students are out being change agents all over the world, that will be a successful program.
Areas like in here or down here, start using a smaller brush. Roughly about the northern areas of the head really badly by hurricane season. And after the hurricane, our school was actually displaced.
We had a wonderful student that was opening rock on this, and she wanted to do a project, and my family had it.
We want to send people out to change communities and change schools. Part of my coming out was with Allison. It's in that spirit. And see how I'm doing some of these changes.
Feels good because when I'm like strong, the school on the same track.
No bother coming in.
It's transforming what your expectation is of college. You know, it's not just this place you go to and pay money to sit from the hub. It's also a part of the community. It's encouraging learning.
They get a first-hand understanding of what the profession is like. It's not just an academic institution, it's a professional program. There's all sorts of other educational opportunities that we help to facilitate.
New York is such a powerful thing. Students who are from, SBA, you should consider New York part of SBA.
The sheer sensitivity, whereas you have a choice, you're bumping up against people all day long. The quantum gives you a perspective that you didn't have elsewhere. Whether you're sort of reminded of humanity in that way, or whether you are realizing something new about humanity, you're realizing these things in a way.
The students come here, obviously, they're going to spend a lot of their time in the classroom learning these new skills, but it's really exploring the city while they're here, really what is learned so much about the role that they're going to be in.
Get them and we can transform them into social beings.
has become the vocabulary of every year using a technology, they have a retail experience that they call destination. This year, Museum of Modern Art is having destination in the city. Museum of Modern Art is really collaborating with us to help bring the entire destination in the city experience. It's a life-changing experience. They are able to be creative of branding and using culture and things from humanity in those things.
Design has an incredible ability to help people see the same thing, to help a vision emerge, to help people align around the same vision. We have a great conviction that design has something really important to contribute, and so this program grew out of teaching designers to understand that gap between what we mean to say and the effect it has on others.
We partnered with the middle school in Brownsville to middle school children reimagine vacant space and brainstorm all of the things they were supporting. So now our goal is to get that to people who actually have the potential to make it a reality.
The whole program is based on students working out in the community, trying to solve problems that are so deeply important.
And all of us grew out of a team getting together, one coming from a product design for this program, and one coming from interaction design for this program, coming together and sort of doing this project was really on-centered and grew out of that saw when they visited on site, people really learn how to see. Just random people. They got this idea to about the role design for people who have trouble with their mobility, but also
I think they were just surprised at people like
the role is to show people that they have a
Also change is a project that we're working in that class. The class was taking a look at childhood research. And so students did a lot of research around what would happen if we took that time in some ways that people were waiting and we were able to leverage it for making good. So they came up with a couple different scenarios. One of them is we don't have any funds left in the metro part, and you actually look for years ago, generally device technology actually with all this template information, and you actually exercise and earn some credits for your metro part. But most importantly, that you could actually pick an advocacy group or a charity that you could pedal for instead of earning money on your metro part, you're earning money for the cause.
there's usually a
What we do through item 2 is we capture these amazing scenarios to visit to New York City and make that available so that everyone has internet connection. Recently, we received a woman in Norway who said she lives in the countryside and she doesn't know what she would do without videos on iTunes. So that was really nice. To be successful in this world, we have to be active learners and hungry learners. So actually contribute to
A lot of dreams about what they want to get. I think a lot of our students may not get jobs, they may create jobs.
The diversity of culture and background has been wonderful. So much fun to try.
I think that's what's so exciting. Right now, we get people from all different backgrounds and interests who want to be part of this initiative.
Ideas help infuse it with confidence to make a difference.
The way that I look at success is when our students are out being change agents all over the world, that will be a successful program.
kind of independent from that. Like it was right there at the top of her hours.
Small areas like in here, or down here, start using a smaller brush. Brushing are the other areas where you can really actually by
We have one student that is with me on this, and she wanted to,
We want to send people out to change communities and change schools. Part of my coming out with Allison was in that spirit and see how good something like this changes.
Food's good because when I'm not sure the school only said, hey, I'm students.
you know, artists, people teach because they want to change the world. Don't bother to come to us unless you want to change the world.
It's transforming what your expectation is. You know, it's not just this place you go to and pay money to sit from the hub. It's also a part of the community. It's encouraging learning everywhere.
They get a first-hand understanding of what the profession is like. It's not just an academic institution, it's a professional program.
There's all sorts of other educational opportunities that can help to facilitate school and for students. New York is such a powerful thing. Students who come, to SBA, should consider New York part of SBA.
The sheer serendipity of the city, whereas you don't have a choice, you're bumping up against people all day long, whether you want to or not, gives you a perspective that you wouldn't have elsewhere. Whether you're sort of reminded of humanity in that way, or whether you are realizing something new about humanity, or realizing this is everything.
When students come here, obviously they're going to spend a lot of their time in the classroom learning techniques and skills, but it's really, exploring the city while they're here, and they're going to learn so much about New Orleans, Orange region.
Together, and we have to transform them into these social beings. Branding has become the vocabulary of that program. Every year, Museum of Modern Art, they have a retail experience that they call Destination. This year, the Museum of Modern Art is having Destination New York City. The Museum of Modern Art is interested in collaborating with us to help bring the entire Destination New York City experience. There's a lot of children as a student, they are contributing to a greater dialogue of branding what their meanings and our cultural meanings from humanity in real time.
Design has an incredible ability to help people see it, to supervision, to help people you have great conviction that design has something really important to contribute. And so this program grew out of teaching designers to understand that gap between what you mean to say and the detail.
reimagine a vacant space and brainstorm all of the things that you have. And so now the
The whole program is based on students working on trying to solve problems that are so deeply entrenched. The novel is a team getting together, one coming from product design for this program, one coming from interaction design for this program, coming together and sort of doing this project that was really human centered. Like we were able to prepare a product and show stuff when they visited on site, people in senior housing, just being people. We got this idea about the role design for people who want to struggle with mobility, but also for those who are able. Our goal is to show people their pragmatic future.
Hope for Change is a project that we've done in a class called Interactivity. But it's also taking into account the obesity. And so the students university project, an advocacy group, or a charity that you could pedal for to earn money on your public learning a lot of our students when they get jobs and talk to you at the time consultancy, a lot of dream jobs that they're going to get. A lot of our get jobs, they may create jobs.
The diversity of culture and background has been one of the.
Right now,
The way that I look at this is when our students are out being engaged all over the world, that will be successful program.
Okay, we're going to get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is the SVA Interaction Design Open House. And so if you are in the wrong place, now's your time to escape and just enjoy some good food and drinks outside. Thanks for everyone who made it out this evening in the rain. I know the weather is quite terrible. And thank you to our audience watching on YouTube Live. We have a live stream audience tonight. So hello to you guys. Thanks again. My name is Liz. I'm Liz Danzico, and I'm the chair and the co-founder of the Interaction Design program here at SVA, a program that was started just about 9.5 years ago now. Tonight we have the sort of honor of being accompanied not just people who are potentially interested in this program for themselves or for their colleagues, but also faculty, current students, and alumni all here to talk with us this evening. So wanted to sort of share what you might expect this evening. My question to you, what does a New York City high school class, sanitation workers in the streets of New York City, and the history of Manhattan all have in common? Anybody want to take a guess? They're all on this slide. For one, yes, you're correct, if that's what you were thinking. They're all projects that came out of this program. First, a high school program that students here developed to teach students across New York City who didn't know about interactive design about it. It started at the Urban Assembly for Math and Science all over the city and then moved up to Cooper Hewitt later. Started by two women in 2011. Sanitation workers have the most dangerous job there is in the country. And two students in 2017 discovered that piece of data and wanted to see if they could do anything about it through the power of design. They developed a smart glove, I guess we would say today. And this glove and a series of services through apps and browser-based web services could alert people about danger that is coming to them, which then went on to win some awards, and they kind of continued that going forward. And also around 2017, someone became very interested in the untold stories in Manhattan, given its history, and was exploring 360 video as a way of telling rich stories through visual experiences through some of the technologies available at the time.
So these don't by any means communicate the breadth of the kinds of work that students can do in this program, but I hope by the end of our hour and change together this evening, you can get a better sense of what to expect, both in terms of the program, its impact, and some of the ways that you can potentially make an impact post-program in the world. This is our short agenda. We are running 13 minutes late, which I guess was just a true way of explaining to you that just happens. So that's like pretty good example of how it works. We're gonna go over just like some basic kind of fundamentals of the program and what it's about. You can ask more questions about that in the Q&A. We're gonna follow that with you hearing from certain faculty. I think we have about 10 faculty members who are gonna share their class in 1 minute each. So instead of going through 15 weeks with them in a semester, you're gonna get a sense of their entire class in just a minute each, which should be interesting for you. So you may walk out of here with almost like a half of an MFA, and that should be good for you. You might choose not to come back. And then we've invited current students, alumni, to come up and answer some questions about the program. And then you can take a walk around and enjoy some food and drink afterwards. Sound good? All right. So true to form, we're going to do a quick warm-up exercise before we even dive in. So all of you should have either sat on or removed the Post-its on your seat in front of you, or seat next to the seat you're sitting on. So I want you to take those out. You may or may not have a pen. We have lots of Sharpies out there that we're going to be passing around. Does anybody need a pen? All right. Jason's grabbing the Sharpies, passing them around. All right, getting ready. If you need a Sharpie, just raise your hand. Okay, so get ready. One more Sharpie over here on the side. Very good. So the first thing, we're going to do two quick things. The first thing we're going to do is, and for you guys watching live stream, I'm expecting that you're doing this as well. We can hear you. One more Sharpie over here. So first thing, we're going to take 1 minute, write down 3 things on your mind right now that are distracting you. Things that you probably should be doing instead of sitting here, things you were supposed to do before you left the office today, or things you're worried about potentially coming up this weekend or next week. Just 3 quick things, 1 minute, go. Okay. About halfway there. Wow, some people really knew. Like, here are my things. Okay, about 10 seconds. People are still thinking about it. Okay, that should be good. You look at your list one more time. Kind of take a look over those things that are worrying you. And the next thing I want you to do is just take the list and then crumble it up and throw it over your shoulder. Just go ahead and like throw it on the floor. And the important thing about this is that, you know, I think for this lesson, over silly, it's good that you vocalize those things and articulate the things you're worried about. But really, for this program, you actually have to push a whole bunch of things away. You have to make choices. You have to concentrate. You actually have to make those decisions to like be here rather than worrying about something. So sort of first lesson in getting an interaction design degree is just like push those things aside while you're here, even though they're really important. You can pick up the crumpled paper on your way out. But, you know, in addition to like prototyping being fairly lightweight and you're having to throw away lots and lots of ideas, this idea of like leaving things behind is important. So second quick exercise, these are more just like icebreakers. Y'all had to put on a name tag and we asked you to write something down on the name tag in terms of like what you want to learn. This could be something you want to learn tonight or something that you would just want to learn more generally. So on your Post-it, the second thing you're going to write down, and you don't have to throw this away, is 3 ways that you can get to learning that thing. So think about it as like something you could do right now, something you can do in the shorter term, and then something you might do longer term. So say you wanted to learn swimming, which is something that someone had on their name tag here. What could you do like today before you even leave this building up to learn swimming? What could you do next week? And then what can you do longer term? Gonna take just about a minute. If you don't have a name tag and you want one, I also have those. I like how some of the alumni are like, I learned everything. I'm good. I'm also not writing anything down. Okay, about 10 more seconds. All right. If you can, sit next to someone and just quickly tell the person next to you what the thing is you want to learn and just one way you're going to get there. Could be the short-term way, the long-term way, but just quickly grab a partner and just say that. Good. All right, ready to come back together? Okay. Okay. So thanks for humoring me. It's hard often to talk about interaction design and like how to get to ideas without experiencing it. So I'm sort of like as best we can just briefly trying to get you to think about how do you put a point on the horizon, like identify a North Star and then work toward it, right? Coming up with plans, mostly coming up with things you can throw away and do quickly and learn from, and then move to your longer term plans. So some of the things that you just experienced by going through that, I'm not going to also put you on the spot by having to answer why that was important, but you know, the ideas are the easy part. It's the committing or the making things real that's the harder part. We very much value working in a lightweight way, identifying the lowest common denominator / MVP, working in public and like publicly committing your ideas to one another, your classmates, your faculty, and your community much more broadly, or people maybe importantly outside your community, and the value of developing a network. So some of the people just sitting around you now know what you're committing to in terms of learning, even though you just were forced to write it down as you walked in the door. So again, it's hard to like communicate some of these values as we talk about interaction design tonight, but that's the spirit of the program. So thank you for participating. We are going to move on and learn like a little more about the program itself. So let me just give you an overview of kind of how we think about the program, how it's structured, some of the things you would learn as you're coming through the program before we move on and hear from faculty, students, and alumni. So for everyone who's ever talked to me about interaction design, I have foisted upon you this image. But for those of you who haven't, could you name what this is? Aaron.
Yeah, this looks like some mapping app. Google Maps.
Yep. So this is how the Google Maps was in the beginning of the program. Program was launched about the same time. The iPhone came out when Obama was still president. The world was very different. And the world was very different when it came to apps and services and how we think about interaction design. But, you know, one thing has remained fairly true, which is we still think of interaction design as a service that looks more like this. And so for those of you who don't know or haven't seen this before, can you say what this might be? Okay, well, this is also an app to a certain degree. This is a map that one can put in your hand. And does anyone know the name of it? Those of you who have seen this before. So it's a map that slides between one's hand, the palm of your hand, and a mitten or a glove that can teach you about the contours of the land as you might canoe or kayak along the coast so that you can learn about a place without having to bring out an iPhone. And as a result, people can drop this in the water. They can go into a cave. They can think about, how this might perform in multiple scenarios, and it never loses its signal and it never becomes irrelevant. So we look at this a lot in this program as a way of talking about this being interaction design rather than what we might commonly think of it, which is an app on a screen or in a browser or on an interface of some kind. And so what we currently kind of hold as true and talk about on a regular basis is that what that means is that behavior is our medium, not computing technology. This is something that we heard one of our founding faculty members say very early on in the program, and something that has rang true still today, that we're not looking at interfaces or even emerging technologies as much as we work directly in that field, but we're looking at what human behavior is and how we can solve for those specific opportunities or problems, as the case may be. And so SVA itself has been sort of at the forefront of that kind of human-centered problem since 1947. And so just a little bit about the school for those of you who haven't seen SVA before. 1947, it was founded on the basis of this idea that we observe human behavior and make ideas real. It was actually founded as the Cartoonist and Illustrator School with 30 students and 3 faculty members. And the idea was that all of them worked in the field. The faculty, probably the founder, and also the students, so that they could take the ideas from the industry and bring them inside and make those ideas real. Today, the college is about 4,000 people or so. The graduate programs in total are about 650, and this program is about 20 students or so per year. So overall, about 40 people in MFA interaction design. The college itself is spread out over the latitude of Manhattan from the east side to the west side. Is about 17 buildings between 26th Street and 14th Street, with lots and lots of different kinds of facilities. But most of interaction design kind of happens like in this general kind of sphere here. And so as you went through thank you again for going through those like quick exercises that like take your ideas and essentially throw them on the floor or have you tell them to someone else. I go back to something that the founder of SVA says quite often, which is that every idea that you have is just that until you actually make something of it, until you actually sort of commit to making it and putting it out in public. And this was quite inspiring to me as I was experiencing SVA for the first time. And so I always think about this when I think about how to introduce someone to SVA, is this kind of spirit, this kind of DNA is present across many, many different departments here. And this is true for our program. If you are here, you may have looked at our website or some other materials. And so our mission statement, if you will, is that we intend to teach and guide students through the process from concept through execution and all the steps in between. So this isn't a program that's going to teach you deeply about how to design an interface per se, but how to connect the dots from the idea all the way through execution and then again, and then iterate. And we believe that that impact has the ability to shape everyday life, to change everyday life as it exists, and that we can do this kind of service for society in many different facets. And so that hasn't changed since we started. And our definition of interaction design in the world has been different year after year, but the core tenets are really the same. There's like a few different versions of thinking about this. One is that interaction design focuses on the relationship between people and the devices or the products or the machines that they use. So if you think about not the machine or the device or not the person, but that relationship in between, that's where we have great value. It also focuses on the relationship between people and people when the technology or the devices or the products drop away altogether. And so what remains when technology or design is fueling an experience among people, but it's not perceptible and you don't know that it's happening? That's the great power of interaction design as well. So devices and products are not even in this equation. And increasingly, I think what's interesting, and we have lots of alumni working in this space right now, what happens when the people drop away and you're having the machines communicate to the machines themselves and people are involved, but the people drop out of the equation? So lots of great ethical questions in this area, lots of things to explore about what that means going forward. So importantly about the people, I don't want to say that they drop out altogether, because if you're here, you know that we think about the audience first and the humans first. So we are very human focused discipline, from user research all the way through kind of release and watching the public. And so we never let that piece drop out of it. So for every project we do, we think about who the audience might be. So the way that that happens over the course of 2 years is in September, one would start a first year. The first year is really concentrated on concepts and methods. So in the first semester in particular, and for those of you teaching in the first semester know this very well, people are feeling a bit like they're piled on with lots and lots of methods. Everything is new all the time. There's lots of different kinds of ways of approaching a problem. But the idea is that it's a toolkit that you can build up and approach the second half of the year, which really takes those concepts and methods and puts them into practice in the second part of the semester. Over the summer, students have the ability to take an internship either here in New York or elsewhere in the world and put those ideas into practice. Many people do that and come back probably informed and a little more skeptical than they were before, to say, like, here's what I've learned in the world, and now I'm going to try to apply that back in the program. In the second year, students become focused on like very long-term projects. And so the longer-term projects extend over the course of that second year, primarily thesis, which you'll hear a little bit about, but also semester-long projects. And then at the end of all of that is kind of a public presentation in what's called a Thesis Festival, which is a celebration of all the work that you've ever done in the program, manifests in a product and a projects that you believe in, that you launch to the public. If you look at the sort of pillars of the program, and so you kind of imagine we slice the program at a diagonal and look at the interior, there are 4 themes that power each semester. And we believe that these are the themes that are important to interaction design, no matter what the classes are that kind of fill them year over year. And that is human experience, human behavior, systems, and business or entrepreneurship. And these become important as we think about how the curriculum could change over time. So a lot of people will ask, how might the curriculum change from 2009 to 2012 to 2015 to 2018 as we grow? How does a program remain relevant and contemporary? And so what we believe is if we stay ahead of each of these 4 themes, we can also sort of stay ahead as students graduate. I always want to be about 5 years ahead or so. outside of the classes, there are lots of other opportunities to learn from the industry and to learn from people in the field. We have a lecture series curated by students, students from the first and the second year, bringing people in once a month in the classes themselves. There are guest lecturers coming in, and there's opportunities to go out to conferences and to participate outside of the SVA community as well. There are classes all over the college. So the classes that you take here are required, but every semester there's the opportunity to take one class outside anywhere in the college. So from printmaking to photography to filmmaking to cognitive psychology and linguistics, there's all kinds of classes that people take both during the semester and then in the summer too. There's people that help. Gwen, who you probably met, and Jason, who helped make all of this possible, and also Eric, who has multiple roles in the department here, and you'll hear from in a little bit. They're the support staff for the department, and they kind of make everything happen. So, outside of the people who make everything happen with the department, the people who make everything happen in the courses are the faculty. And so I always think it's valuable for you not to listen to me, but to hear directly from people themselves. So this next segment is coming to you in the spirit of hearing directly from the faculty and seeing if they could present their entire 15-week or 7-week class in 60 seconds or less. So there are people who have agreed to do this, so thank you very much. What is going to happen is there is a woman in the audience who will be announcing your name. And when you hear your name, please come to the front and you'll have 60 seconds to present your class. So for those of you who don't know the faculty, there are about 24, 25 faculty over the course of 2 years. We're going to hear from about half of them. So you're hearing half of an MFA right now. All right, you guys ready? All right, let's get started.
Seconds, ready? Get your laptops out.
Just kidding. I mean, well, 60 seconds not enough time to learn programming, but neither is like 15 weeks. But what this class is about, the class is called Hello World, Logic of Interaction. It's more about learning how to code or learning how to learn new languages and discover them on your own. As we've learned, like 20% of programming is mostly like doing the actual work, and the other 80% is actually debugging and learning and figuring it out and learning how to ask for help and those sorts of things.
So we'll teach you 3 languages. We'll learn C, JavaScript, and Python. And we start from everything from silicon to the singularity. So you'll learn about data, you'll learn about computer vision, you'll learn about interactivity, you'll learn about Internet of Things things.
Yeah. Yeah. So
we really cover a wide range and help you understand how you can build basically anything.
Yeah. So it's more we start at what the problem is and what you're trying to solve, and then what technologies are out there that can help us kind of achieve that goal. So kind of help construct some of the wonderful things that Liz showed earlier.
And then Bruno will demonstrate.
Yeah. So the first assignment that we have in the class is we program a game, kind of like those old school Zork text-based games, and we start there. And then eventually we want to move things off the screen and develop physical and dynamic devices. So by the end of this class, you should be able to build something like this, which is like a connected internet device. And in the game that you make, you collect the gem. And then by the end of the class, you should be able to program and build a physical gem.
How do I know when 60 seconds is up? So in one of the classes I teach is called physical computing. There's overlap with the coding class you just heard about. But this class is about making computers physical. So all of us use computers and devices every day, but we're used to them being two-dimensional rectangles, and we're used to using our hand, maybe our fingertips. But that's pitiful compared to your body. Why can't a computer sense when you're moving around? How come it doesn't know if you're lifting your arm up or not? It doesn't know if there's other people in the room. It doesn't know what the temperature in the room is, etc. So in this class, we start at the very beginning, building circuits, learning electrical theory, making teeny tiny little parts get attached to each other, often in very painful ways where you're, as Bruno just said, a lot of it at first is figuring out what you want it to do, but really the majority of the work is figuring out why it's not doing what you want it to do. So we learn how to think about solving problems with physical electronics. So that means hacking and building technology to do what you want it to do, not what it's designed to do, but what you think the future should be. So you learn how to make circuits, you learn how to do some coding, you learn how to do soldering, you learn how sensors work so you can sense movement, temperature, even intangible data, the position of things tilting in three-dimensional space. Goodbye.
Hello, I'm John Bloom. Thank you. If Alexa or Google Home or Siri has ever driven you nuts, if it ever said something weird to you and you don't know what caused that, you should really look forward to this class because we'll be talking about conversation design. As you've probably noticed, voice interaction is on the rise. It's becoming a much more common thing. And if we do it right, it has the potential to be the most organic way for people to interact with machines. So in this class, you'll learn about best practices for conversation design. You'll learn about the methods. You'll learn also about tuning and the process of going through it. So also one of the other important things we'll cover is the ethics of conversation design and interacting with these systems and issues of transparency. And that's about it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm going to be teaching you guys smart objects in the spring. My co-teacher couldn't be here, but she says, hi, Kristen. I'm an industrial designer that loves electronics. She's an EE and firmware engineer. We're going to be focused on wireless experiences, so building on everything you learned from Eric's class and other classes, and really playing with Bluetooth, low energy, and internet connected things. Most of the class will be very hands-on. It's a short 7-week class that we're packing it in. So building things for the first few weeks and then having that culminate in a project that you get to pick yourself. That's it. I was faster. Josh.
What up, YouTube? So my class is about screens and practice. There are a lot of people doing fancy stuff with wireless sensors and glowing orbs and stuff like that. And we realized that somebody needs to talk about rectangles and 2D screens. And so we're trying to do that. But more importantly, we're also about to, my co-teacher is also not here. He says hi as well. But we try to give people practice. Our course is set up in kind of 2 sections. There is the individual projects where you are building something very simple on your own and kind of practicing getting the details in place. And then the second half is group projects where you work with other people to do the exact same thing. And then we have kind of a mini thesis kind of project at the end where week over week we will review and you're working out your problems and making changes and things like that. Hey. All right. So if you get to come here, it's quite enjoyable. So thank you very much.
I am not Munawar. She is celebrating her birthday weekend upstate, so we can all wish her a happy birthday. She's given me a list of the her class titles in her 15-week class, which is called Leadership Ethics and Professional Practices. Sorry, I only remember the shorthand, and I'm going to read them out to you. So, superpowers versus kryptonite, first week. Second week, building your personal brand. Third week, art of the interview. Fourth week, surprise studio visit. Fifth week, the power of one-to-one. Sixth week, unconscious bias. Seventh week, creating healthy environments. Eighth week, another surprise studio visit. Ninth week, giving and receiving feedback. 10th week, making and breaking habits. 11th week, building a rock star team. 12th week, another surprise studio visit. 13th week, be the change you want to see. 14th week, use your powers for good, and final class, retrospective.
Clock is already ticking. My name is Ted Southern. I teach a class called Future Wearables. It's a quick 7-week class that we just culminated a couple weeks ago. And I try to break it down into future and wearables. So the first class, we kind of talk about what it means to design the future and think a little bit about speculative design. But then I'd like to go deep into wearables in general. I teach the students how to sew. Think a little bit about like generally what goes on the body and how challenging it is to build things on the body. There are 2 projects during the class. One is a standardized project where everybody builds a headlamp, all the same. And then at the end of the class, we all get a chance to kind of explore our own ideas for what a magical future wearable could make the world a better place. And in between, we have a guest lecture and a studio visit.
Hi, I'm Liz Danzico. I also teach a class called Narrative and Interactivity, and it's a second-year class focused on language and writing. Did you know that the human loses concentration every 12 minutes? Have you ever been in a class or listening to a TED Talk or watching TV and you sort of like break and you start looking at your phone and you look around the room? You are losing concentration every 12 minutes. How can we, as storytellers, regain the command of having our audience listen to our stories? That power is essential when you're speaking. That power is essential when you're writing and asking people to read the written word. That power is essential when you're actually presenting a visual story. And so narrative and activity challenges us to try to think about how we could use the power of language and the power of story to get our ideas across and make sure that they're heard. It's the first time I'm teaching it, I will say. And so I will, together with you, potentially find this class as it goes along. So I look forward to it.
Hi again. I should get twice as long because this is 2 classes. But in brief, all these other classes, you learn so many different skills and methods. But the culmination of your experience here as a student, as a graduate student, and soon to become a professional in the world is your thesis project. So for an entire year, 2 semesters, you get to work on your own project that's of your own design, conceiving from the very beginning, first prototyping rough ideas, doing user research, looking out in the world to see how actual people respond to your prototypes and not just how you imagine it as a designer. And working all the way through that process, through multiple prototypes. And some of my students in the room, I can see them wincing with pain because they're in the middle of it now. You end up with a working, complete prototype that represents your unique idea that's new, that's never been done before, hopefully in interaction design. And that also has a book that you publish along with it about your process. And also at the very end, you give a talk like we're doing up here, except much scarier in front of like 300 or 400 people in the auditorium. And you are often booted off the stage at the end, just like this.
So as I said, thank you so much for doing that. Now you get half a sense of what the program is about. There are many other faculty who are not here, including co-teachers and others who teach a whole series of other classes. Feel free to ask about that in a bit when we go to questions or talk to any of us afterwards. But I just wanted to make sure you got to see just some of the people who couldn't be here tonight. So year after year, we get a number of questions. You know, where do people go when they graduate? What makes a good candidate for the program? What should my portfolio look like if I'm applying? And so there are many other questions you may have. And so I thought to answer those questions, I would invite some of the experts, people who have lived through the program and are currently living through the program, to come up and answer some of your questions. So I have a few questions for them, and then we'll open it up for you to ask them these questions and more. So could I welcome Current students, Rachel, Avi, Sophia, and Ruth, Alushka, and Noor as alumni. Come on up. There is a seat for you. And to keep our live stream audience being able to hear us, I'm going to pass this mic around. So as you answer the question, would you just mind speaking into the mic and maybe even like paraphrase the question, if you will, because I will no longer have it. Is that fair, Jason? Okay. All right. So are you ready? All right. So the first question is for Sophia. Let's start with you. Can you just describe a typical day in the program?
It's hard. Every day is different. You definitely start out early, show up, a lot of group meetings. So you have to handle, your time throughout the day. You meet with most people from the studio in one day, at least like 6 people that you study with. Then you start class. Physical computing is a good one. It's 3 hours long. You go through the class, you go through the homeworks, then sort of like the tutorials that you learned. Eric explains them a little more, and then you start building some stuff based on that. Then this is like my regular Tuesday. We have a small break where you run out for food, come back. We have service design, also 3 hours. A lot of discussing about what service design is, what has happened throughout the week. Then a long lecture, very interesting. And then we go home. Yeah. Oh, I am first year. Yeah. So I've been here for 2 months and a little more, like a couple weeks more.
All right, so Rachel, you're farther down the road, right? Still in the second year.
Yes.
Can you talk about, like in retrospect, what's the workload like as you think back on the couple year and a half that you've been here? What's the workload like, and what's the difference between first year and second year?
Okay, so to paraphrase for the audience if they couldn't hear out there, what's the workload difference like between first and second year? So first year, I think, as Liz said earlier, is a lot about getting a mammoth amount of new information and methodologies, and you're just learning something new all the time, multiple things every day. And it's very, very useful, and I draw on it all now, but it's also incredibly overwhelming. And your brain has to learn to soak up a lot more information than it perhaps ever has tried to before. Second year is, again, as was said, application. So in some ways, it's a little more relaxed, at least for me, in the way my brain works, because I have problems in front of me and I feel like I have the tools to solve them instead of solving the problems and learning the tools at the same time. Then again, there's also thesis your second year, which is a challenging but rewarding personal project. So I don't know that one is less work, but they're different kinds of work.
So Avi, you are also in your second year.
Yep.
Made it through. So if you think back to when you started, what do you wish you knew when you started that you don't know?
I wish I knew how to better manage my time when I started, because I feel knowing that how to manage your time effectively and how to work in groups, I think that's one of the most the biggest learning that I've learned throughout. And I think that's something that's going to help me in the future also. So yeah, that would be it.
I would just second those two things. Time management, yes, but especially working in groups. I think it's in that little red book that's out there. One of the assumptions about interaction design is that people naturally know how to work in groups. It's not true. It's, again, a really challenging but rewarding thing, but that's definitely one of the most valuable things I've taken out of the program.
Well, and for all of you, just a question, this could be for anyone. I often get questions about coding. So physical computing, smart objects, and Hello World. This is a project from last year, Hello World. All involve some degree of coding. Can you talk about, do you need to know advanced coding when you start? how do you work through those classes if you don't know it? What's that like?
Well, I feel you do not need to know advanced coding when you start. The one important thing that is taught in this program is to learn how to learn. And if you know that, I think you can just start mastering any new skill. So I think that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I can add to that. When you meet your classmates, you're going to find that, some of them are going to be better at some things than you, and some of them are going to be able to learn from you some things. So a lot of it is just teaching each other and helping each other. So the stronger coders will kind of mentor the, beginners, and then you'll be able to mentor them in other things. So that's also a great part about the program, is how much you learn from the other people there.
So while you have the mic, could you mention who you are? You graduated, and I wondered, in the retrospect of that panic being lifted off you of doing thesis, can you tell us a bit about thesis and what that experience was like? I mean, Eric kind of set it up a little bit.
Yeah, so I just graduated, still recovering from thesis, maybe. My name's Noor, and that was my thesis project on the screen. It is a chance to kind of get completely lost in exploring an area that you might be interested in or passionate about or just curious about, and then find your way towards kind of a product or an intervention that kind of addresses that area that you're curious about in a way that is really satisfying and also never finished. So in my case, I was looking at disability and inclusive design, and kind of went down a few different paths until and many dead ends, but also had made fruitful conversations and met a lot of cool people, until reaching the idea of robot furniture, which I got to prototype and test and build, and that was really fun. So it's a roller coaster. There'll be lots of low points where you're like, what am I doing? And this is never going to work. And then you're going to be like, okay, pulled it off. I'm alive. And, and yeah, I'm very proud of the work.
Since you're sitting next to Noor, I'm curious, we talked a little bit about the classes, and we talked about like some of the things you could do outside of class, but in your experience, you were kind of like pretty active in the program. You did lots of different things inside and outside the program. Can you talk about like what are some of the things that you can do outside of the program while you're a student?
Yeah, of course. One of the big things, actually, this picture over here is something that I did in Josh music's class of final. It was a project that I did with Eugene and Paola. We managed to apply for funding, and we actually got funded, and we actually started to build this app that actually helps students to retain information in class by creating this AR functionality. So we were so passionate about it that in the side of doing schoolwork and thesis, we met over the weekend just to actually build this project. It's like you get to do all these fun things when you are in this program, and you also get to work with people who also have that exact same passion. Yeah.
And just while we're talking about things outside the program, there was a program that Eric put together this past summer that a few students participated in, and I wondered if you could just talk a little bit about. You happen to be one of the people that went through this program. We have 3 summer programs during the summer between semesters that are for our students, but also for people outside our program. So could you talk about this one?
Yeah, so the question is about a summer program this past summer, that is outside of the program and optional, but very rewarding. And in our case, Eric organized a workshop in a remote island just on the edge of the Arctic Circle in Norway, with 2 other schools, the Architecture and Design School in Oslo, and then the Design School in Umeå, Sweden. And yeah, we were kind of sent to this island, and we had 3 weeks basically broken down into thirds. So first we had to kind of do our research and learn about the residents of the island and what their kind of community needs were. Then we were given a space, a location. Actually, we were given the location at the beginning. We were given a site to redesign and renovate to fulfill those needs that we uncovered from the community. And then the last week was actually building out that space, which seemed very impossible, but we got done. And it was really fun, really great to meet people from different parts of the world and different perspectives on design and architecture. Lifelong friends made there. And should I go into what we did, or is that good? Yeah, so our solution, it's in the Arctic Circle, right? So like when we were there, it was sunlight the entire time, like beautiful pseudo sunsets where the sun kind of like approached the horizon and then went back up, which is great, except if you're trying to sleep. But then in the winter, they have almost no sun because it's so far north that they're facing away from the sun. And so we called it like a light room or a light sauna, this really bright space where they could kind of hang out and get light therapy. We painted the walls yellow. It was a very controversial decision, but it went through. And one thing that I'd like to find out is whether people are going to be using it or have been using it. And then we had like an outdoor space where we made like a fire pit and benches where people can like meet and gather, and then an indoor space besides for the light room where they could also have like their like meetings if they were in a club or just like kind of a communal space to hang out.
Ruth also graduated already. In fact, last year. Just can you tell us about what the work you're doing now and whether or not that's connected to the work you were doing in the program?
So the question was, what work I'm a graduate, and what am I doing today? So what I do is actually work with a lot of data, AI, and blockchain. And my thesis was actually on online dating, which was a really fun project. And actually, through my thesis, I got really data literate, which kind of inadvertently landed me in this role at the startup. So while I didn't know about this emerging technology then, I was able to explore a little bit about it through my thesis. And in hindsight, reflecting on my time here, I feel like I did develop the skills to sort of tackle new things and being thrown into something new. And it's been really exciting and really fun. Yeah.
Skills are you looking for in interaction design candidates? So if you were to hire someone right now to work with you on a project or something you're working now, what would you be looking for?
I would say process, showing your work, how you arrived at an answer is really important so that someone can follow along because they weren't there with you. And by being able to share your work, then you can actually work together and collaborate. Then the other piece is like how you work with others. Making these things are really like complicated and difficult, and you need everybody's talents and efforts. So showing how and just demonstrating how you've done that, especially in tech, it's really important, and it's the only way to really wrangle together something.
And some other things to add to that also. Process is important too. I'm blanking right now. Sorry. You need to also like make sure that you add the pictures. Like when you start doing something, even just the rough sketches, please like take the pictures because those are things is part of the process. And also think about your portfolio in terms of like think about who are the people who are actually going to view your portfolio. I have come across like great work, but the portfolio is really hard to navigate within that. And I just close it because I'm like, I can't use this site. Maybe the work is really good, but if the person can't really like go through that site, that's also one big thing to think about, just how you're gonna have your portfolio for your audience.
Well, there are a lot of questions that come up
education or other schools would consider before you came to SVA to this program? It's part one. Part two is, what was the determining factor, if you're willing to share, and if it's relevant to this, but what was the determining factor in having you to join this program?
Hey, so I was a big weirdo and I like researched every school that I was interested in and I visited all of them. But I think it came down to I was looking at CIID, I was grappling with that in Copenhagen and Carnegie Mellon. Ultimately, I landed here feeling that it was the right environment because it's a smaller class. So you really get a lot more face time with instructors and with the people that you're with. And I felt like there was more sense of freedom with what you could do here than like I actually really wanted to go to Carnegie, but it was like a little bit too rigid and I wanted to do other things and they were like, we don't know how we can do that. So think here was a little bit more encouraging to explore other facets. Yeah. And the faculty is awesome. Like really, really awesome.
Do you want to go?
These are big questions. I come from an industrial design background. I went to Parsons, and while I was there, it was very focused on mostly furniture making and home accessories. And so that is what I worked on for a while. And to me, just one day I was working on this chair, changing the color and like adding small details just so a firm would buy it from us. And like after 8 hours of that, I was like, this is very useless. Like I want to do more than make a chair like three different shades of black. And so I was very interested in technology and how as humans we interact with it because in the end I'm an industrial designer, and that is why I decided to come to SVA. So I had no previous knowledge of interaction design when I applied.
Yeah, I actually had no idea what interaction design was, even though I have a design background. I just heard this term called UX, interaction design, and I was really curious. So I took some classes actually here in the summer intensive during the summer, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, and you get to like learn the process of everything, and that's how I was like, oh, I want to pursue this as my career path. So you don't have to know what interaction design is if you join here. You get to learn what it is while you're in this program. I had just a regular design background. I studied graphic design in college. I studied computer science for 2 years, so I was basically, you could call, I was like a digital designer where I was just coding websites. That was my background when I came to join this program.
Yeah, my undergrad was in industrial design, and I dabbled a lot in interaction design. Yeah.
I did a lot of things. I came here a while after undergrad, so I got my bachelor's in theater and French and international affairs. And then I worked at the UN. I did operations for fine and performing arts and higher ed. I worked in admissions at Parsons while I did a part time associate's in graphic and communication design, and then I came here.
Hi, I have a background in industrial design, and I worked for 8 years after that before joining this program. And I worked with companies like LG, and I was doing home appliances. And then when I was in Philips, I got introduced to the healthcare domain and how UX was making an impact there. So that kind of motivated me to learn UX and learn it by taking an educational course instead of learning it on the job, so that I can go into the in depth of it and get some learnings out of it.
I did my undergrad in graphic communications management. It was a split business degree and also in graphic communications. I interned and did a lot of graphic design. And then I had, for a couple summers, I would do these art installations, really random. And I also worked at a product company in Toronto, where I'm from, and that's where I learned about like just the product development process and got exposure talking to developers, and that gave me a sense of like what this was. So I kind of wanted to merge like both of those things and package it all together. Yeah, this is an unusual sample size of the panel because everyone here did that. But I could say, like in my class, there were a lot of people from literally anywhere and everywhere.
Fashion too.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Every year there's one or two.
How many content applications that pilot each year?
How many total?
Yes. I mean, every year.
Yeah, every year. It grows by 15 to 20% every year. Can I get the exact number? I don't know. Where's the pen? Can we give out the we accept about the acceptance rate is about, depending on the year, like 8 to 10%. Oh, patents filed. I thought you said applications. That's a great question. So recently, I don't have a record of that, but recently we have started actually teaching a couple of workshops on exactly that. Patent law and filing patents. One of the women who just graduated had 8 or 10 before she even got here. And I'd say it's not very many. I'd say 2 a year, probably. Not a lot at this point. Although this year, this 2018 year in particular, the first year students have gotten a couple of workshops already on that. So we're actually with the growing rise of, in the work of intellectual property and like putting ideas out there, we take that more seriously.
In terms of time commitment, were you guys able to hold down full-time jobs, or did you sort of go to school?
Are we going to go down the line? Or?
So I am not a person who is holding down a full-time job, but somewhere in here are definitely people who are. There are at least 2 people in my class who last year held down full-time jobs and worked at the same time. So I'd say you have to ask them. But I'm doing a part-time consulting internship thing with half of my semester now. It is possible. It's debatable whether or not I would recommend it. It depends on your own personal time management and what you feel you're getting out of it and how that contributes to your professional life afterward and the time you're spending here. So it is possible, people do it, but it's a personal choice.
That was like a perfect segue. My question was around that. It's probably more towards you, about administration. And the question is, can you talk a little bit about the plans or opportunities for a part-time program? Folks who might want to continue to work in some capacity while they're doing the program.
So the question is about, do we offer a part-time? Are we considering part-time? We once prototyped a part-time program by by allowing someone to graduate from this program part-time. So she did it in 3 years. And we thought that would be great because a lot of people ask about it and a lot of people don't want to give up their job or can't for financial reasons. And it didn't work very well. She is a great success and has gone on to do these tremendous things. But what happened was the curriculum changes so much year to year. Like we keep these lenses, but by the time she needed to take a class that her classmates had already taken, it had changed. And so like her degree wasn't the same as other people, her cohort. So it just, the industry moves so fast that we weren't able to do the part-time. We can offer part-time if we only offer part-time, but we just can't do both at the same time. So that's the drawback with that. We do have, as I mentioned and Nora talked about, these summer programs that a lot of people have gone through. So there's a summer intensive program that's pretty intense, thus the name, where you get 5 different classes about that cover the range of kinds of curriculum that we cover in the main program. And there is a high school program, which is not relevant to you, and then this kind of additional like expedition type program. But the summer intensive might be an option for someone who can't do the program full time. But for now, we're dedicating ourselves to the full-time program because it does allow for this very intense collaboration you can't get otherwise, but we'll consider it in the future.
One thing I haven't heard from like this overview of the course is the unique aspect, I think, of having all your classes with the same classmates. And I wonder if you guys can just kind of talk about what it means to like spend 2 years with the same group of people.
I think Nora kind of touched on this a little bit. You are, it's probably the closest network you're going to build. It's the people that are going to help you through any problem, or you might be that person that gives them insight on how to solve their problem. So there's a lot of like teaching, there's a lot of collaboration. So yeah, you're probably going to learn the most from your classmates, and that continuity is really helpful because you get adjusted to who these people are. You can see the similar passions. So people have done like a lot of extracurricular projects, as you've heard, on shared passions. And yeah, I thought it was pretty great. Actually, I really like the small class size, but I won't speak for everyone.
Also, I would add that the class is curated in such a way that there are people from different backgrounds coming together from different countries. So there's a good mix of learning that happens across the class. So I think that also adds to one big reason why you learn much more than before.
I mean, I've only been here for a couple of months, but it's definitely challenging. You have to see each other every single day and even weekends, and then there's a lot of group work. But it's definitely interesting. You meet a lot of people, like she said, that are sort of interested in the same things as you. So they push you. They have different skills, so they teach you things. You teach them things. Patience is one of them. But it's very. I also like the small class. I think it makes everything very personal, which is I think helps you thrive in a lot of ways.
I mean, I'm glad you asked that because I think the network is one of the most powerful parts of this program, and not just the 20 or so people that are in your class, but the people ahead of you and the people behind you. Just being part of this network in terms of the alumni, even the alumni that our class didn't personally meet, there's a lot of camaraderie and a lot of support. So you always have the opportunity to stretch out feelers. And to somebody's question earlier, that's one of the reasons that I really liked this particular program, was that connection.
Yeah, I think everything's been covered. But anecdotally, me and a couple of my fellow former classmates, have continued to work together on projects, completely outside of our jobs. Just came back from Prague, where we kind of had a collaboration on a art installation. So there's a lot of other extracurricular opportunities that you're just going to get along really well with these folks, and then want to make stuff that is maybe not interaction design related, but using the skills that you learned here. Also, in the past, I know there've been businesses that have been launched with classmates together, and like Alushka was talking about the funding that she got. So yeah, it's great having a group that you're so close to and can trust and know how you work together and have tried it out in this environment, so that when you get into the real world, you know what you're getting into.
To add to that, that's basically like your extended family that you kind of growing with them for 2 years. Also, the department has a Slack channel that we all have access to. So I can reach out to a person who graduated in 2009 and like say, hey, I'm just graduated. Can we grab coffee? So it's really, we have a really great community just within this SVA IXC.
If I may add something, I know you've heard from me a lot, but I think it's worth mentioning that I'm surprised the professional community. I mean, the personal community you spoke to a lot, and the professional community is interesting from my perspective. I have alumni coming to me offering scholarships and funding for current students. There's lots of job opportunities of people offering internships to current students now that they're in a hiring manager position, and a network across the country. Well, it feels like every city I go to, and I'm sure the same is for you, there's a community of SVA interaction design folks who are there and like want to guide you and see you and chat. So it's pretty supportive. It's surprising to me every year, I have to say. So one last question. Yeah. It's possible to do electives.
Yeah, you can do electives. You can actually, you have to take the 5 mandatory classes in this program, and you can audit one class in any undergrad program. So I did 2 classes. I audited one in the Visual Futures Lab. I took a Rhino class, basically do how to do 3D software and 3D print. And another semester, I was just learning about architecture and like how to draw in perspective. Yeah, so you can totally do it. It's just a lot more work that you're just signing up for, but you have that option. Yes.
Okay. All right. I'm sure there are other questions, but we'd love to talk to you afterwards. Thank you so much to the panel who's come in this evening. You can stay up here or you can go back to your seats. Thank you so much again. So the studio is here. There is, for those of you here in person, there's a map out here to kind of take a look around. I think you can wander over to the Visible Futures Lab that Alushka just mentioned and see our Maker Studio as well. It's where many of the classes are held that aren't held down here in this room. There's food and drink, and then all of us will stick around for questions. But that's it for the formal part of the evening. Thank you so much to you guys who came out to think about the program, faculty, alumni, and current students who are here on Friday night, although I have seen you on Friday night otherwise, so I appreciate it. Thanks again. Enjoy.